That's something I see a lot. Is I see the big bucks down in the bottom sometimes.
Yeah.
Like they'll get down and they like them swamps down there in the bottoms, that swampy spots. And, that's where I hunt most of my stuff in Pennsylvania. I stick to the swamps. Even if there's hills, I go to the swamps. Like if I'll the swamps seem to always have the bigger deer in them.
How so? Yeah, yeah. Explain a little bit more about that because that's interesting because there's an area that I've hunted for years and I've only ever had success there during the rut, but I've always
Mm-hmm.
been in these swampy bottoms and these like places that it's just like that's where and a lot of times the does will be bedding in there too. But I
Mm-hmm.
want to hear kind of your thoughts on the swamps.
I think it's a lot because of the thermal draw. For one, it's always creating a vacuum down in there. So with the high pressure in Pennsylvania, the deer just kind of know that's I can smell everything when I live here. Especially a lot of Pennsylvania, it doesn't have those giant mountains. It's just kind of rolly,
Yep.
gradual, like those hills. So it's not enough terrain for them to bed up high. You know, they'll use it to go up from the swamps and use it as food source up on the oaks and stuff on the high terrain. But you only get maybe a couple doe groups and stuff that bed up on the tops, and then the secure bedding is going to be down on the bottoms in the swamps. You know, and what's tricky about them is the bucks don't go into the swamps as much as they bed right on the edges of those.
Yep.
So like they see it coming down the hill, and then they're out of there. But when I'm looking at these swamps, I'm not just looking at a swamp. Like I'm looking at the back of the swamp. Like so, we're like, okay, he's going to be bedding along the edge. What is the back wall like? You know, I want to have like layers in the swamp. I don't want the deer to just be like trying to run into an impenetrable forest.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be able, he could be able to walk into it like 50, 60, 70 yards and wander through it to travel, you know. And when you can find those places where they can walk through, then you find, okay, now I'm going to be where the buck is going to be bedding in this. A lot of times, like you'll find like a drainage, like a little creek or something washing down into the swamp. And right at that point is where you're going to start finding the bucks because it's just that little change in habitat and it changes the swamp a little bit and the where it kind of makes like a where it goes in, so it makes that back door for them.
Oh, and man, anyone that's listening, like that's such a gold nugget of information, those layers, because like you can look at this for not even just swamps, you can look at it for laurel or anything too, like or rhododendron. You get like the spots where it's open woods, and then you have like some kind of sparse, somewhat thicker, and then it gets like so thick that they don't even want to go in
Yeah.
there. But you find that middle ground, and there's two examples I can think of in swamp areas where the one place I called it the hidden valley that was like this bowl system that ran down into this swampy bottom, and right at the bottom of that bowl was a bunch of blowdowns, and
Yeah.
it was just like right on the edge of the swamp, and I call it the buck nest because like it
Mm-hmm.
was only used in early season and late season for bucks to bed in this spot, but they would like there would be even groups, bachelor groups that would bed there
Mm-hmm.
in September, and they'd be on these different parts of the blowdown, and they could tuck right down into the thicker part of the swamp
Yeah.
once the season came. But I learned it from blowing out so many deer in there, and I'd blow them out from a long ways away because everything was pulling down
Yeah.
from all the ridges, and finally I got somewhat smart with it. And in gun season, I was in 2019 or 2018. I had a tag, and I was just still hunting along and sneaking. I was like, I need to figure out a different way to get in here. And I could hear people driving on the other hill, and I'm like, this is a spot that I feel like this deer would be a safe haven. So I like snuck around the side of the ridge and kind of just like poked close to, and I was just using my binos, and I spotted a buck pushing a doe around. It was December the
Mm-hmm.
4th, and I just took my bleak can and just a little Primos bleak can and dumped it over twice,
Mm-hmm.
and he came running right up out of there, and I shot him frontal with the gun, and it was just like that was something that came to me. And the other one was because I was finding sheds in this area, a different part of the swamp where there was an old clear cut that started like filtering down and getting like a little bit more sparse. It was like cut a little bit differently. It was kind of open, a little bit of rocks, and it led into this little spring seep that ran into the swamp. And I would find sheds right there and then some rubs kind of on the outside of it. And I truly believe there's a buck I'm still trying to kill that he's going to be 9 years old, I think, this year. That is, I think he lives in that spot.
Yep. And when you kill him, you're going to kill another one there the following year anyway.
Yep.
It's just going to be one of those spots. Just the way you described it, I'm like, yep, 100%. It's like you just know, you know.
And how do you get in and like how do you hunt those types of spots? Like that's always the difficult thing.
Well, according to my buck in Pennsylvania, you walk in there and shoot him at 10 yards.
I like that strategy.
Because that's how that one happens. But it's funny you mention that because that deer, when he was bedding, when I'm tracking him around that swamp, every time he started bedding was something like that. You know, he wanted that little drainage going down into the swamp, the little brook flowing in. You know, everything lined up. You know, you got the water current going down, you got the thermals running down in there. So when he beds right there next to that, everything's just kind of right to his face.
Yeah, that totally makes a lot of sense. And like where I've struggled with that specifically in like outside of the rut is like where to set up and I've tried like different outskirts because like this one area I've known it for so long that there's a big scrape it's on this side, there's a big scrape it's on this side, but they're still a couple 100 yards away and it's almost too far to get them coming out unless it's the right
what you got to do to kill a deer in that spot is go down in that swamp and figure out how to get across it. That as sucky as it sounds, that's like because then you're coming in the back door, you know.
Yeah.
And you can, if you went in there, even early season, like you can get in that, if you went in that spot and figured out how to get through the swamp and across the way he's not coming in, because he's going to be coming straight down the hill or channel along the sides of the swamp and go into that bed. If you can come in and get there in the morning and get set up directly over where that creek flows in, that thermal's all going to be pulling right underneath you. And you got him. All you got to do is he's just got to come in, you know, but you won't get busted.
Listen, well, I guess even if that buck did die of old age this past year, but if I kill him this year early, I was just gonna say that. But if I kill him, I'm giving you a call and I'm gonna say, Paul, thank you because that's it. I'm gonna definitely try that and see if I can slide in on him.
Yeah, because that's what I've killed a couple in September like that in Jersey too, like hunting marshes and stuff, you know. It's the same thing. Like I come in the back way. You got to figure out how you can get in. Sometimes you can't. It's almost impossible. It's so thick.
Yeah,
you know, it sucks. But once you get in there and you're in, you're golden.